The dust had not yet settled over the collapsed tunnels of Mbab, the air still thick with the acrid smell of scorched concrete and the lingering echoes of Israel's devastating bunker-busting strike. And in the chaotic, leaderless void that followed, a profound and terrifying silence had descended upon Doha, a silence that the world mistook for shock, for paralysis, for the stunned incapacity of a nation that had just had its strategic heart ripped out. But this silence was not an ending. It was the calm in the eye of a hurricane, a deliberate, calculated pause during which the automated, dead-hand protocols of Qatar's most secret contingency plan, a plan codenamed Al-Asifa, or the Storm, quietly and ruthlessly activated itself, bypassing the missing chain of command and transferring ultimate authority to a hardened server farm buried deep beneath the headquarters of the Qatari Investment Authority, where a sophisticated battle AI, fed by a continuous stream of data from covert satellites and undersea sensor networks, began to execute a series of commands that would unleash a fury so biblical in its scale and so precise in its targeting that it would transform the sky over Israel's capital into a Dantean hellscape of fire and shrapnel, a retaliatory strike designed not to win a battle, but to break a nation's spirit and forever shatter the myth of its invincibility. This was not the impulsive launch of a remaining stockpile. It was the execution of a pre-programmed symphony of destruction, a multi-layered attack that began not with missiles, but with a cyber offensive of unprecedented sophistication, as thousands of Israeli government, military, and civilian servers were simultaneously flooded with a new, AI-generated malware strain that specifically targeted the logistical and command software of the Iron Dome, David's Sling, and Arrow defense systems, introducing catastrophic errors into their targeting solutions, slowing their response times by critical milliseconds, and most devastatingly, spoofing their radar feeds with phantom targets that appeared to be incoming from the Mediterranean, effectively turning Israel's legendary defensive shield into a confused and blinded liability in the crucial first minutes of the attack. As Israeli cyber units fought this digital wildfire, the physical onslaught began, launching from hidden, dispersed sites that had survived the initial Israeli counterforce strike, from the pitching decks of commercial freighters disguised as container ships in the Red Sea. A first wave of over 100 low-cost loitering munitions and decoy drones ascended into the morning sky, their flight paths calculated to approach Tel Aviv and Jerusalem from the west, perfectly mimicking the spoofed radar signatures to further sow confusion and draw the fire of the disoriented air defenses, a suicidal vanguard whose sacrifice would clear the path for the real killers. The second wave was the hammer blow, a coordinated salvo of every remaining precision missile in the Qatari arsenal, a shocking display of previously hidden capacity that included the feared Russian 3M-22 Zircon hypersonic missiles launched from submerged platforms in the Persian Gulf, their Mach 8 speeds making them virtually unstoppable as they streaked across Saudi and Jordanian airspace towards pre-programmed coordinates in Jerusalem. Chinese-made DF-15C ballistic missiles with bunker-buster warheads targeted at the underground command bunker of the Kuria military headquarters in Tel Aviv, and a mass volley of the very same Israeli-made Delilah cruise missiles that Qatar had acquired through a shadowy third-party deal years earlier, now turning the manufacturer's own technology against them, their familiar signatures causing further mayhem in the Israeli defense identification systems. The third and most psychologically devastating wave was reserved for Jerusalem itself, a city sacred to billions and a symbol of Israeli sovereignty, which now found itself under a rain of fire as the missiles that had penetrated the beleaguered defense network began to impact. A Zircon hypersonic missile, moving too fast to even be seen, struck the hilltop compound of the Israeli Knesset. Not to destroy it entirely but to punch a massive, smoldering hole through its center, a symbolic decapitation of the nation's democracy. A DF-15C missile detonated deep underground near the Western Wall Plaza, its subterranean shockwaves shaking the ancient stones and causing panic among worshippers, though the wall itself, miraculously, remained standing, and a cluster of Delilah missiles struck the Givat Ram campus of the Hebrew University, targeting its advanced research laboratories in a deliberate attack on the nation's intellectual future. For 45 minutes, the sound of continuous explosions, the crump of interceptor missiles, and the wail of sirens created a cacophony of terror in the streets of Jerusalem and Tel Aviv, as the once impenetrable defensive dome, the pride of Israel, was overwhelmed by the sheer volume, sophistication, and cunning of the attack, its batteries firing until their launchers were empty. Their heroic crews watching in despair as streaks of light broke through the defensive curtain and slammed into the heart of the capital. The human cost was immediate and horrifying. Despite many citizens reaching shelters, the targeted nature of the strikes on government and military infrastructure meant that casualties were heavily concentrated among the very political, military, and strategic elite that formed the core of the nation's leadership, with initial reports suggesting catastrophic losses in the Curia bunker and the Knesset, creating a power vacuum eerily similar to the one Qatar had just suffered, a brutal and ironic symmetry of destruction. As the last missile found its target and the dreadful noise subsided, replaced by the screams of the wounded and the roar of fires burning out of control, a new silence fell, this one born not of strategy, but of sheer, uncomprehending shock, as Israel, for the first time in its history, found itself on the receiving end of a coordinated, strategic-level bombardment that had successfully bypassed its defenses and struck its most sacred and secure sites, a reality so terrifying and so unprecedented that it fundamentally fractured the national psyche. The international reaction was one of paralyzed horror. As global markets went into freefall, oil prices skyrocketed past $200 a barrel, and every world leader understood that the conflict had just escalated beyond any hope of diplomatic control, hurtling towards a regional, and potentially global, conflagration that would draw in the United States, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and potentially even nuclear-armed powers, all because the automated, post-human vengeance of a dead-hand protocol had successfully executed its final, apocalyptic orders, leaving a world holding its breath, waiting for Israel's next move, knowing that it would have to be even more devastating, pushing the entire Middle East and the world closer to a brink from which there could be no return.